Welcome to HTM on the Line, the podcast that is for HTM by HTM. I'm your host, Bryant Hawkins Sr. My special guest this week is Dr. Brian Bell, an instructor of the biomedical engineering department at St. Petersburg College in St. Petersburg, Florida. Ever dismantled a toy just to see how it works? You're not alone. Join me as I converse with Dr. Brian Bell, a man whose childhood curiosity catalyzed an illustrious journey from fiddling with gadgets to gaining a doctorate in mechanical engineering. Brian's relatable tales of teaching HTM and mechanics will hook you as he reveals how an unforeseen chain of events led him to a rewarding career in education. Hold tight as we delve into Brian's unique approach to teaching, which combines his love for technology and hands-on learning. As we approach the end of our enlightening conversation, we broach the subject of crafting an affordable, accessible textbook for students. Brian shares his insights on the complexities of teaching biomedical engineering in educational institutions and the integration of medical devices with IT networks. To wrap up our fascinating chat, Brian dispenses invaluable advice for fresh faces in the HTM industry. Tune in to this riveting episode. Brian's passion for the HTM field and dedication to education is bound to leave you inspired. Without further ado, let's get into this week's episode. Brian, welcome to the show, sir. Or should I say Dr. Brian Bell. Welcome to HTM on the Line. How you doing today, sir?
Very good. Very good. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you having time to come join me, man. Before we get started, Brian, Dr. Brian, or is it Brian? How you like to be spoken to, man? I don't want to insult you by...
No, Brian is perfectly fine. I tell my students that. I tell everybody that. Actually, I got a story for you. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
The only time I've ever given someone a hard time about the doctor thing is I had this guy. He was above me. He was a little bit of a supervisor, and he comes up to me. He doesn't know I have a doctorate, and he says something like, we're talking, and in the hallway, and he says, "Oh, actually, now it's Dr. So and so." It's like, I just got my doctorate. And I was like, "Oh, congratulations. That's great." And so he's like, "Yeah, so now I expect you to call me, Dr. This." And I was like, "Oh, great. That's what is your doctorate in?" And he's telling me, I have this doctorate in education, and which is common in my field, teaching. I go, "Oh, that's great. Congratulations." And I go, I actually have my doctorate as well." And he goes, "Oh, really? I didn't know that." So I go, "You can call me doctor too now." So the only people I ever make call me doctor are those who insist I call them doctor.
That's really funny. All right. Well, Brian, let's give us a background then on how you get to that doctorate state. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up knowing I wanted to be I'm an engineer. Well, at least that's what I thought. I thought I wanted to be an engineer. And so everyone's like, "Oh, you're good at this, you're good at math." But I really liked is hands-on, taking things apart. I love taking computers apart, building things with my hands. And so everyone said, "Oh, you should become an engineer." Okay. So, I go through the engineering thing. Ended up, I was big into soccer when I was young. So in high school, soccer, got a scholarship offer, but the school that I had a scholarship offer to didn't have engineering. So I was like, "Okay, what do I do?" So they had a physics program, and I was like, "Well, it's not really what I wanted," but they're like, "Oh, no problem. After you graduate, you can get a couple courses and you'll be fine." All right. So I did the soccer thing, got the physics degree. Then I was like, "I'll just get a master's in engineering." I kind of wanted to get a master's anyways. So then I go get start working on a master's. Come to find out, if I'm going to get the master's, I got to pay for it, which is expensive. I'm like, "Oh, well, that's not that bad." But then someone goes, "Hey, if you come get a PhD, I'll pay for your school." Basically some people who are like, "Hey, we need people to work for us. So you stay here longer, you do work for us, we'll pay for your schooling, we'll do all that." And I was like, "Well, I wasn't really planning to go to school for 10 years. in college, but I didn't know what else to do. So I said, okay, sure. I didn't want to pay for it. So I was like, I'll do it. So I ended up getting a PhD in mechanical engineering. And it was a long journey, but it was good.
How did you get into teaching about HTM or biomed for that matter?
Good question. So, I mean, part of it started when as I'm doing my graduate work, I'm going, yeah, okay, this is interesting and I'm not bad at it. But what I really like is actually working on all this equipment. So like, I'm in the lab and I'm working on all these devices that are extremely expensive laboratory pieces of equipment, pumps, x-ray machines, scanning electron microscopes, all this stuff in the lab. This is what I really like. I like working on the equipment, using the equipment. Things would break and I just, it wasn't really my job to fix it, but, it usually took 2 to 3 months to get a service tech out there. So sometimes I would just try to fix it myself and read the manuals and learn how to fix this, sometimes multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment. And so I really loved that. So I knew intuitively that I loved working with the technical side of machinery, the technical side of technology. And when I graduated, I was like gung-ho on going to work in industry. I was going to go, make medical devices, go do this, go do that. And then, life happens and I was like, well, I don't know, maybe I should stay around. And then my wife, she's a lawyer, so she has her bar in Florida. So she's like, I really don't want to take another bar. And there just wasn't that much industry that fit what I wanted to do in the location that I was at. So I was like, all right, let me look around at some teaching jobs. I thought I wouldn't do that right away. I thought I'd push that until a little later in life, but I'm going to look around and see what I can find. So I found this offering for a teaching position that was, I can't exactly remember the wording they used, but it was something like medical manufacturing. The people who were actually advertising it didn't quite get the lingo right. And so but I was interested. Like they made it sound interesting. So I went and I checked it out. And I said, okay, I see what this is. I kind of get a feel for this. And, started exploring a little bit more about what this was and realized there really was no terminal degree in biomed, right? There's no PhD in biomed. You can't get it. So what kind of skills do you need? Well, you need, electronics, which I had plenty of, mechanical engineering skills, all that stuff. And so, okay, I said, this seems possible. Like I wasn't sure at first, but it seems possible. But what really sold me is when I realized how much you get to work with the equipment. And I just love that idea. And I love teaching students the hands-on practical skills needed to work on technology. So once I got that understanding of what this would be, I was like, oh, okay, this is something I'm interested in. I'm committed to this.
Right, man. I love hearing the story, how individuals come into the HTM industry. It's always something different. Nobody tells the same story. Yeah. The only thing they have in common, they never heard of it before they got
never. Yeah, I know. It's so true. I think the narrative's changing a bit, but it is very common. You're right. Everybody I talk to who's been in the industry, it is a very strange path that they take to get to this field.
Yes. So what about your students? I'm not going to say kids because the students may be grown folks.
Oh, yeah.
What are their stories like about how they found out about biomed? Was it just by chance or parents, relatives?
Yeah. You get all sorts of stories. I would say a lot of it is connections. Like I have people who work in the healthcare system already, and then they find out about biomed by working in the healthcare system. They have a friend or they meet someone or they're a nurse tech, something like that. And then they go, I don't really want to work in this part, the health, not so clinical. I want to work on the equipment. So I get that situation. I get people from, who want to work at the VA, and maybe they have some electronics experience and some military background, something there that they're working towards biomed. I have a couple, family members where it's like, oh, my dad did this, I'm going to do this. That's happened a couple of times, or like that's the family business is biomed. So you get all sorts of stories. I get some people who just say like, oh, this just sounded interesting. Occasionally I do get that person who's just really interested. And you're absolutely right that the majority of students are definitely not what you picture as a college student. It's not a 19-year-old, 20-year-old student who's never done anything. My average age of student is 32 years old.
Oh, wow.
So most of the people in my class have families. Often they're working. So it's a pretty diverse population.
Great. Yeah. I was reading the July issue of Tech Nation and I ran across you in it. And you was talking about the HTM workshop.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a minute. What is the HTM workshop all about?
Okay. Yeah, sure. I'll talk about that. So that was all right. So, as an educator, I'm constantly thinking, how do I deliver great experience to these students? I want the students to really leave the classroom and enjoy it. I want them to learn. Obviously, my goal is to produce learning, but I want them to enjoy the experience, to get as much out of it as they can. And unfortunately, HTM, biomed is just such a small career field. It's such a small niche thing, which is great in some sense. But as an educator, there is just not a whole lot of content and resources out there. You're doing a lot on your own.
Yeah.
So I thought, what? I would really like to have some, what I consider call them lab activities, but these are hands-on activities that students can do so that they can learn something as they're doing. Right. So I came up with a couple ideas with me, another guy, and we kind of brainstormed some ideas on how to, make it more approachable, make it more interesting. And instead of just grabbing the electrical safety analyzer or maybe the patient simulator, how could we try to do something that, because sometimes those things are cost prohibitive. If you have a $5,000 meter, you can only have so many of those. So we thought, what if we can build some of our own biomedical equipment?
Okay.
So we started playing around and we came up with a couple ideas of how to kind of create little kits that you can build your own stuff. So we have a kit that you can build your own ECG simulator, which, is kind of a STEM idea. I'm sure you've heard of Frank's Hospital Workshop way back in the day. That used to be like a go-to resource for a lot of stuff.
It is. No,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I remember he had a project like that and I said, oh, that's really cool. But it was still all analog. There was no digital component. And so I was like, well, let's take that to the next level. Let's actually have a patient simulator that does multiple, because having like 80 beats per minute is nice, but really you got to be able to test alarms. So how do we have different modes and different settings on our patient simulator? And so we have one that can do about 8 settings right now, but you can add more if you want. So, students right now, they can go in and they build the patient simulator that does, waveforms at different heart rates, and they can throw the alarms on the equipment. Once they build it, they have to solder it together, put it all together. Once they build it, they can, change it, throw the alarms on the patient monitors that we have and see that their device can be used to test medical equipment. So it's just a fun way to get them involved, engaged, and say, hey, look, this is, you built this, you have a little pride in this, but you can also use this to, instead of having to buy a patient simulator for every single person, which we don't really need. At this education level, I don't need calibration certificates for every piece of medical device. I don't need that. That's overkill for me. Now that doesn't mean we don't have them use the actual patient simulators as well, because we want them to get experience on that. But it's a good way to get everyone involved, get everyone a chance to use it a little more frequently. So we have that and a couple other things where, you can build your own ECG reader. That was our next step, because it's like, well, if you have a simulator, now you want to be able to test it on a patient monitor. But what if, my thought is, what if a school doesn't have a patient monitor? What if a high school wants to do this? How do they do it? Well, they can use this other kit that we have now that you can build your own ECG reader. So it reads the ECG, and we have a little alarm setting on there that you can set the, pretend alarms of the fake reader. So, these are some different things that we've been playing around with. And a lot of it's just to give the students hands-on experience with soldering circuits, recognizing components, if they're going to repair a PCB board ever, which doesn't happen as much as it used to, but if they do, they want to, have a little bit of these skills, and also it just helps us train them, get them engaged in the questions as well.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about this HTM workshop. That's how we did it when I was in school way back in the. It was that's all we had. Matter of fact, that was a simulator back in the 90s before they got all cute with the stuff we have today. It was something small like that. You put in certain numbers, you have to type in the numbers.
Yeah.
And then it'll come up on the screen, but it was more analog now. Everything's a lot digital now, but
yeah. And that's
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And from an educational point of view, it's sometimes the analog stuff is actually better because you can really get to understand how it's working. Once it becomes digital, it's so much software driven. It gets a little tougher.
Yes. And like you said, everything's automated now. Now you got test equipment that automatically goes into your CMMS system. So everything's being, like you said, digitalized. But with this process, are the kids taking to that building of the test equipment? Are they excited about it, or what's their take on it when they're building this? Are they bored with it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wasn't sure at first, right? So I introduced it basically to my students at first, and I was like, let's test it on them and see if they like it. And it was amazing to actually see the range of skills, and some of the things, just the ability, the ability to solder, the ability to recognize components, the ability to just kind of think and troubleshoot through things. And some students had a hard time. Like, this is hard, but there's been no negative feedback. Everyone said this was a good project. Even those people who utterly failed at making it, they said, you know what? I learned so much even in the failures. So I think that's been really encouraging, because even those who may not have succeeded in building it, maybe they messed up on their soldering, maybe they made some big mistakes on something else. They said, you know what? I felt like I gained some skills and I learned what not to do in the future. And that's, a lot of it is, let's fail on the stuff that doesn't necessarily matter, so that when it really matters, it's not going to be that catastrophic.
Yeah, you said soldering. Now that's like a dinosaur in the industry today.
I know.
Soldering irons are not being used too much today.
No, they're not. They're not. But it's so funny though. There's almost like it kind of comes in waves, because every so once in a while I get, the healthcare, the hospital system, that for sure I shouldn't say no one, but very rarely will they let a soldering iron anywhere near their stuff. But in the manufacturing world, I get people all the time now in that world who come to me wanting skills in soldering and rework sometimes, because there's almost a shortage of that skill anymore. And so the little work that they do have, they can't find anyone to fill it.
How large are your classes that you're teaching now? How many of y'all graduate, would you say?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we're graduating around 12 students a year last time I checked. So it's not huge. Although as far as biomed programs go, I'd say that's still on the larger side. The classes can get up to 20 students, which we'll run a couple classes in the fall that'll have close to 20 students.
And so you're graduating with certificate, associates, what type of?
Yeah, so we offer 4 different credentials. We have a medical equipment repair certificate. So that's just a college credit certificate, and you can get that, and you just take biomed courses. You don't take any gen ed courses. All right. So if you're like one of those people who just like, I just want to take the things that matter to the career I'm going into, you can do that with the medical equipment repair certificate. Then if you choose to go on from that, you can get the AS degree. And as you do that, you're going to get one of 2 other certificates. We call them subplans, but they're basically another certificate that you get in either medical device design and prototyping or medical device networking and cybersecurity. So depending on which path you go, and I typically recommend, if you're going to work in the healthcare system, you should probably move towards the networking and IT skills. And if you're going to work in the manufacturing environment, you might work towards the medical device design and prototyping skills. But those are the two different avenues that we have for our students.
And the certificate program takes how long compared to the associate program?
Yeah, so I obviously it depends on how many credit hours students are taking, but it's designed to be done in about a year. So if you get the repair certificate, you can do that in about a year. And obviously the other certificates take about a year as well.
And what university are you teaching at?
So that's St. Petersburg College.
Okay, St. Petersburg College. Now, I think I read somewhere, does St. Petersburg College have a program with high school students come into your program? How that's working, or is it the other way around?
Okay, so this is a pretty new thing that was recently funded through the Florida Department of Education, where we are setting up I want to say it right, a high school academy for biomed.
Wow.
And so what's going to happen is the high schoolers at the Tarpon Springs Collegiate High School are going to be able to get a full AS degree in biomed as they graduate high school.
Wow.
So that's a very new development. It's kind of, there's a little bit of a push to bring technical education back at the high school level. And so we're working with the high school there, and their students are going to be able to take classes in our lab and work with the professors there, instructors there. And so it's kind of a new thing, and we're not sure how big it's going to be or what's going to happen, but we're excited. And I think it's a good direction. I think a lot of high schoolers can use that. Maybe they get their degree and they can go and work. And as they work, they can continue on their education. But it's definitely a change in mindset for a lot of, I think, parents and high schoolers, because I think in high school, you just think, oh, I'm just going to do these general education things that are going to prepare me for college. But here's an opportunity to actually get something that can make you workforce ready.
So you will graduate with an associate or on your path to an associate?
You would graduate with an associate's.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're really cutting the education down, right? I mean, you're basically eliminating the cost of college. So it's a pretty amazing thing. I mean, it's a great deal.
Man, wow. So you can graduate at 18 years old and go into the workforce.
At 18 with an AS in biomed now. Yeah. So that'll be a new thing. We've never, done that.
Yes.
So it's going to be new. There could be challenges. I anticipate, we always have people do an internship. And so like finding people to take interns at that young of an age, I think will be a challenge, but I'm looking forward to it. I think there are employers out there who are really looking for people right now. So I think they're going to be open to it. I'm hopeful that they're going to be willing to work with us and say, you know what, we really want a talent pipeline. And to do that, we're going to work with you.
Perfect. It's amazing how you called your kids biomed STEM kids, because every time I talk to somebody about STEM, biomed's never part of the equation. It's everything but biomed. So it's encouraging to see how you included the STEM word associated with biomed, because I've never seen the STEM program associated with biomed nowhere.
It's definitely not common. And I often, I was at a conference for engineering 2-year degree engineering education conference, right? So, this is kind of the world that my program lives in. And I think I was one of maybe out of 500 people, there might be a handful of people with biomed programs there. So it's still pretty small, even in that small of a setting. But the good thing is there's always interest in biomed. And when people understand what it is, they get it. It's a tough thing to get. It's a tough thing to start as far as education goes, because it can be costly, and there's, medical devices aren't cheap, and getting faculty that are willing to teach it is also a challenge. So there's some industry challenges on the education side to getting the pipeline going, but I think there's some good stuff in the works.
Yeah, it's just amazing how this industry is so quietly kept, like we're trying to keep it like a secret society or something. It's amazing how many people go into hospitals though. I mean, it's still unknown. which is why the efforts you're putting in and the efforts we're trying to put in just to get the word out, because it's an awesome industry. It's just nobody knows about it. And
I don't know how to fix that. I think it is forever probably going to be a little bit of an issue, but I think the good thing is, as technology continues to be more, I don't think technology is going to get less prominent at healthcare. It's just going to continue to explode.
Yeah.
So the need is just going to continue to grow, and at some point that need will shine through.
Absolutely.
It's like the need is there. We need people, and I think it's going to be good for the profession. I think personally, salaries are going to continue to rise. There's going to be increased attention from political, state, local, national, of like, hey, this is a need, and we need to fund this. We need to, increase this pipeline of talent for this industry.
I think you said it right when you said that the need is going to make it in the funding, number one, because we're older than IT. But IT came out and it just was like everybody was throwing money behind it. And next thing you know, IT was the need. And there was funding IT. And I think biomed's going to go just like that. They're going to have no choice but to fund it, or you're going to be shutting down hospitals. So it's going to blow up eventually. I just hope I'm around to see it. Hope it's not my kids seeing it, but it's going to happen, because at this rate, it has to happen. I mean, can't think of anything else that would not make it happen. Now, I did a little homework before you came on, like I try to do with my guests, and I ran across one of your posts where there was this book entitled Essentials of Biomedical Engineering Technology and Healthcare Technology Management. What is that? Yeah. What is that book about there? And also, I would definitely give you my email, because I would be a reviewer if you still need some.
Okay, sure. Yeah, please do. So this is an early works. I'm prototyping this. I'm just getting this to the point where I think it's kind of coming to the end, but I haven't published this yet. This is a book I've been working on to some degree just make a more accessible, easy to access, entry-level biomed HTM textbook that in some ways, I'm just selfishly writing it for my own sake, where I go, none of the textbooks out there quite fit what I need them to do. So let me just make something that fits what I need. And if other people benefit, great. I'm still trying to figure out how much work to put in. It's like, once I started, it's like, oh, I could add this. I can add this. How much IT skills should I add to this? How much cybersecurity should I add to this? It's hard to keep the scope focused, but I've been working on it, and I'm getting some good feedback of some additional things to add. And I'm hoping to get it out maybe by the end of the year. We'll see. My hope is actually, I don't know if this is possible. My hope is to make it just free so that students can get it, not be an issue, because I do have affordability issues with textbooks and things like that with certain students, because sometimes students are making nothing or barely getting by. So trying to get them something that can be easily gotten to, but also maybe, so that's kind of what I'm working towards.
That's awesome, man. I guess in the world of digital electronics now, you can download everything. So that might help with making it free. Free is
I think so. Yeah, as far as an ebook goes, obviously a textbook.
Well, definitely, I would definitely love to see it and see what's going on in it. And if I can give you any type of suggestion, I would gladly share it. And I think it's a great idea, and it may trigger other ideas from other individuals, because I was talking to James Linton. Yeah. And you may want to share this with your students, but he had his students call a biomed department, and it's sad. I can't remember exactly. I know they was asking questions about the day and day of a biomed. So I don't know if your students have any type of project when they first come into the classroom. That might be a good idea for you to share with your students.
That's a great. As long as the biomed departments don't get too annoyed with how many students asking them questions. But that's a great idea. I like that.
The only problem he had with his kids was his students had their parents call. Instead of doing.
Oh, that's funny. I've never had that problem. He must have a younger population than me for sure.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
I do not have that issue, not yet. We'll see with the new collegiate high school. I might have some of those issues, but I do try to expose them to, my students to a lot of the social media efforts out there with, even like your podcast and some of the other stuff out there that it's like, hey, there's ways you can connect with biomed right now through these avenues that are pretty approachable and pretty easy, low cost, where it's like, hey, just go watch this YouTube video, learn about this person, go watch this podcast, go listen to this podcast. And that's a great way to just start getting your mind tailored to the industry and learn about the lingo that's used and the buzzwords. And a lot of that stuff is key to communicating with the field. And so I do recommend students do that.
Yes, because biomed, HTM, that could be confusing, but
oh yeah, a little, you think?
and I think it's more the older ones that's hard to adjust than the young ones. Because if they come in here in HTM, it will be the same. But the older ones still stuck with biomed, which is not wrong. But it's like, I get HTM, it's like the umbrella, and I can go either way to me. But you get that challenging.
It does get challenging, even in my field of education. We don't really have a category for it, so it's like we become part of the manufacturing umbrella, and then we have this like biomed under that, and it's like that doesn't make much sense. But it's a tough one. It really is a tough one.
Yeah, because biomed really doesn't, to me, define us. It throws us in some type of lab technician or something when they hear biomed. Yeah. So I get it in that aspect, but it's better than facilities because they used to bank us in with that automatically in the early days. But it's just it's still a great industry. I tell people it's just. I know
the tough thing with I like the concept of HTM. The problem is if I say HTM, like no one has even a clue of what I'm talking about. Biomed, they at least they think they know what I'm talking about, and they're totally wrong. But if I tell biomed to people, they're like, "Oh, you do biomedical engineering," and I'm like, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And they'll probably talk about DNA modification or some, so I'm like, no. So take a step back. So I can educate them, and I do, try to educate them on what it is. When I say healthcare technology management, people just look at me cross-eyed. So that one's a tough one.
Absolutely. And the reason, like you said, they got a lot of podcasts out there, and then you have how-to videos on YouTube. Yeah. And it's growing, which is one of the reasons why I decided to jump in there and try to help any way I can, because it's real challenging for the young people coming into this industry, because it's evolving every day. Like whatever you teach in this year, you're probably going to have to readjust and change it up in 2 years because the industry is changing. Like cybersecurity wasn't as strong as it is today 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And now you got to put that part of your curriculum probably just to get them introduced to networking. I mean, it's so much now. It ain't just going in there with screwdrivers anymore. I mean, you got to be computer illiterate somewhat.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, all our students, they definitely have to have that computer literacy issue. That's non-negotiable for us. Yeah. But it's amazing. I think a lot of it is just training your mind to learn new technology. So I don't focus so much on making sure I have every latest, greatest thing, but if students know how to learn technology, they can learn the stuff that comes out 10 years from now, right? You got to just understand how to learn. I tell students the most important thing that you're going to learn in my class is not a bunch of content. It's just learn how to learn. That is your goal by the end of this degree.
Continuous learning, because you're going to learn. I'm still learning. And every day it's going to be something different, and they have to be able to adjust and adapt to it. If not, you're going to get left behind.
And sometimes you see that. I mean, at least I do. I see some technicians who are like, they don't want to learn the new stuff. They don't want to adapt. And eventually it catches up with them. And all of a sudden, they're stuck going, wait a minute. What happened? I used to be at kind of the top of the game.
Exactly.
And now I'm not. And so it is a mindset. You have to stay on it.
I always tell people, like you might get a text, I've been in the industry for 20 years. Okay, the stuff you worked on 20 years ago it's probably not in the hospital right now, except for the surgical tables, sterilizers.
Yeah.
But other than that equipment's gone. So you hopefully learned how to work on the stuff that's here today, because 2020 stuff is not here right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
2002, right? 2020 stuff.
Yeah, I know. No, I know what you mean. It's like having 20 years experience is only good if you have 20 years of growth and learning in that 20 years, right? It's not about, well, I repaired this one device for 20 years. It's well.
Let me ask you this question. Do you talk to your students about like biomed and IT worlds coming combined? I know you had a biomed IT course, but do you try to incorporate that into teaching the kids also, so they can kind of know the relationship regarding the two?
Yes, we try. We definitely do. All our students take the courses to get the some of the network certifications that we offer, so they'll get exposed to those. The tough thing is like where you get the overlap, right? That okay, here's a medical device. Now let's connect it to the network, because medical devices don't always play by the same rules as computers. They play similar, but it's a little different. You might use static IPs where you wouldn't ever use that almost in computer world.
Yeah.
So there's some little nuances, and we do try to, dive into those in the medical device networking course that we offer. And it is a challenge. There's not a lot of people teaching that. I think I might be one of the three. I know of 2 other programs that even talk about it. And so there's just not a lot of stuff out there. But it is something we press forward and try to do, because it's so important. It's so critical. And it's a challenge from my perspective, because as difficult it is as you all have to deal with hospital healthcare IT systems and just, working with your IT departments to make sure medical devices, try working with the educational institution on, I mean, it is near impossible. I try to get them to get a couple network medical devices, and okay, this, and this. We finally get everything. We get all this stuff purchased. And then we find out, there's this one device that no one thought about at the time. It was an access control thing from Cisco, and it was going to cost us $1,000 a year to keep it up to date and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, our IT department's like, yep, no, we're not doing it. So now I'm stuck with $20,000 of medical devices that I can't even, connect to the network, because we have there was probably one of 20 different things that we just didn't think about in the grand scheme of connecting it. And I go through all sorts of headaches because of the IT side and trying to teach it, but you make do. You find ways around. And
see, that's a good lesson you can tell your kids. See, now if we had a biomed IT guy here, he would remember to get that piece of equipment I needed for that. Because that's where they're going to come into a valuable place, because we can argue the equipment, but we got to be able to also speak IT language. Having that,
and I will say, the biggest lesson learned: don't trust the sales guys as much as the guy selling the stuff. He's like, oh yeah, this is everything you'll need. And I go, all right, you sure? Because I can't get anything else. And no, the sales guy doesn't care. He's trying to sell his medical equipment. Don't always try. I've learned if you can ever get a sales guy who was a biomed, that's usually the best. If you get a guy in medical device sales who was a biomed, they usually treat you pretty good.
Yep. That's they recommend any biomed that's kind of, they recommend he get into the sales side, because he knows operations, and he will know that equipment, and he's going to know exactly what you want. Whereas, not that a sales rep want to rip you off, but they just, like I said, like Carl said, they're going to throw everything at you. You need this, you need that, but you have to know how to tell what you don't need or not need. But that's going to be the deciding factor. And that salesman who happens to have a biomed background can be your best friend in that aspect.
Yeah. So, I learned my lesson. But it's one of those things you just think, as an educational institution, you hope you steer you a little bit right, but sometimes they don't. So
within your institution teaching program, how many instructors do y'all have in the program? Is it just 1, 2, 3, or?
So we have 2 instructors. It's me and Carlos Villafane, great instructor. He is a biomed Baycare healthcare systems, and he does a couple of our courses. So kind of it's good that we have a little balance of, I'm more on the kind of research side of things. He's practicing biomed right now, but he also teaches. So
that's good.
We have a good team, and we're actually looking for someone with if anyone's interested, we're looking actually for another faculty. So
have to live in the Tampa area.
Yeah, it would be for the Tampa area.
Okay.
And so they are looking.
I'm assuming most of your classes have to be in the evening if he's a biomed by day. So most of the classes are evening classes?
Most of our classes are at nights, or occasionally we've done weekends, but for the most part, they're all at night. We should say there's some hope that one of the reasons we're actually hiring is because we do want to offer some more day classes. So there's some hope that there will be some more daytime options, because we know that, the younger students in particular, like you said, they're a little more attracted to those day courses. So
yeah,
I think that's needed. The tough thing is, you gotta get enough critical mass there to make it worthwhile. Yeah. I've definitely noticed over the last, because I've been doing this for 8 years now. So I've noticed the last 3 years, just the need has seemed exponentially greater. There's so many people contacting me saying they're looking to hire students, in particular, they want to hire people right out of college. And I'm a lot of times telling the students, and they're having their pick, right? They're not desperate for internships and work experiences. They are having their pick, which makes it tougher for some of the people on the lower end of the spectrum of pay and benefits. And, I try to tell them, look, I don't, it's tough. They're like, I really need people. I'm going, look, you're still paying a, 2017 wage.
Yeah.
They're going for these other places. It's not my place necessarily is to coach you on what your business strategy is, but I was just, as I was traveling on vacation last week, I was looking at the Buc-ee's, the Buc-ee's gas station.
Oh yes, I love Buc-ee's, man.
Okay, Buc-ee's, yeah, everyone knows Buc-ee's, right? And I was looking at their pay for their workers, and I'm going, hey, guys, this is, I think they're starting around $22 an hour, and they work up to like $35, $40 an hour. And I'm going, if this is what you're seeing in like the food service gas station industry, that's, some of the people in my area need to step it up. That's all I'm saying.
I'm a dog. I have to give it Buc-ee's is an extraordinary place there. I mean, they have the best restaurant. I had to give them a plug right now, but they have the best restrooms on the market, hands down. You got to use the restroom. You better get to a Buc-ee's. You get everything you want in Buc-ee's. I mean,
it's an interesting destination place. It is cool.
And you're right. At the gas pump, you see starting at $16. If you work overnight, it's $22. Yeah. I'm like, management $32. I'm like, wow, this is not bad.
Yeah, really, it's something else. And obviously, there's not Buc-ee's everywhere. They're more of a local. There's only so many of them, but it is just an interesting thing. Like, if you really want to attract people, if you really want to attract talent,
yes,
I think you got to be thinking. And I think as an industry, that personally, this is my pitch as an educator. Like, if you really want to attract people, you have to have standout benefits. It doesn't have to, and I think the career ladder is there within HTM. That's where I sell people is you may not make as much at the beginning, but if you stay with it, you're going to do really well.
Yes. I always say that too. Don't chase money. I mean, you never catch it, but the money will come. Just get the experience, and everything else will take care of itself. I personally believe that with my heart of heart.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to your kids, I know they always probably ask that on the first day of school, or when they get into the program, pay probably comes up a lot. How do you keep them leveled? Because some of them have extraordinary ideas of what they should be getting paid. How do you balance the scale when you talk to them about pay?
It can be tough. because I think people like to look at medium salaries, especially when they're starting, and it's like, well, look, you're not going to get the medium salary when you're starting out, especially if you have no experience. Like, there's no way, that's after you've been working, you've earned those, cost of living increases. That's not, you don't get to start there.
Yeah.
But I try to get the window. I try to paint the window. Look, some people start at the lower end. Some people start at this higher end. The reality is, if you have good communication skills, if you're going to continue to learn, those are the things that are going to keep bumping you up. And especially I say, look, don't focus so much on the pay, focus on what kind of training are you going to get from this place the first year, the first couple years, because if you can go to a place and make practically nothing, but they're going to pay for all your certifications, they're going to send you to, GE school and Phillips and all these fancy, $10,000 trainings. That's a huge benefit to you. You're going to have a great portfolio as you go into your career, and you're going to be able to take that anywhere.
Yes.
So think long term.
That's hard for a kid, man.
Yeah, it is hard.
And especially for if you have some individuals in there who's maybe doing a career change, and they may have been in their field 10 years.
Yeah, and that can be, I think a fair point. I tell them, look, where are you coming from? Are you coming from, were you a car mechanic? Were you this? Do you have some transferable skill? Because if you do, you can probably argue for a little bit higher wage. And sometimes they do, I think pretty successfully, but they have to have a very clear transferable skill. I think the most successful was someone who came from IT and networking, and they did make a substantial amounts of money starting out just because they had some of those IT networking skills. But you have to have something that's truly transferable to the industry. You can't just come with anything.
Exactly. Well, Brian, before we wrap this thing up here, I want to give you, I usually ask this one question, but I'm going to give you two questions since you're an instructor. What advice can you give to fellow instructors that's teaching the future HTM professionals? What advice could you give to instructors who may be listening?
Yeah. So for instructors that are listening, the number one thing that has benefited me is just having a strong relationship with your local biomed groups, organization. I have a pretty strong one in my area, but, just make connections with industry so you can understand what the needs are, understand your local industry, what the needs are, and just work with them. I think biomed is one of the best communities ever. These people, they're just amazing. So I've just always been impressed by the level of experience, quality, just a very generous group of, profession. It's just people want to give back. They want to participate. So that's your best touch point. Find those people in industry who can help champion your program. They can come in, help you build your program.
Right. Now, my next one, what advice you can give to some students who may be listening, or some students who just got into the work industry? What advice you can give them as far as the HTM industry going?
Yeah. I think it comes down to, when it comes to technology, technology is constantly changing. It's constantly changing. The best thing you can do is continually learn, stay up to date, pick something. I think a lot of people nowadays, they're like, oh, I have to find this magic thing that's going to make me excited. The better you get at something, the more excited, the better you're going to get at it. So, whether it's networking and cybersecurity, or whether you really love the manufacturing side of things, pick something, stick with it, and get really good at it. And the excitement, the passion, all those things come as you get more experienced and as you become, a better practicer of that skill.
Well said. Well, Brian, I appreciate you joining the podcast today. And whenever that book's about to get released, you're welcome to come back and share it. And I appreciate your efforts, man. And I'm one of your biggest fans, and I'll be cheering you on. And if anything I can do for you, please, I'm here for you to support you guys in the way I can. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
All right, man.